Sprint races in Formula One are broken. Whether you love them, tolerate them, or hate them, we can all agree that the format just doesn't work for the Formula One weekend. It's disjointed. It lacks the momentum of a standard Grand Prix weekend and ruins the flow that would naturally build up on its way to the Grand Prix. It also locks the cars into their setup for the entire weekend, not allowing the teams to fully exploit the sprint race or the Grand Prix. It's a compromise for both. Now, I've seen some high-profile figures around Formula One in the punditry and commentary and YouTube speaking about how they would go about fixing Formula One sprint weekends. But they all seem to come up with complex and convoluted ideas to try to solve this problem. What we really need is something simple. A few weeks ago I made a video and mentioned that sprint races are something that Formula One really need to sort out in 2024. And in the comments somebody asked me how I would go about fixing sprint races. And this was a really intriguing question for me, and I wanted to do what I've just outlined, keeping it simple but making it more interesting. So here we go, this is what I suggested as a fix for sprint races. My big issue with sprint races is that I feel shortchanged as a fan. The reason I say that is because a standard race weekend has 2 hours of practice on a Saturday. But when we come to sprint weekends, Saturday consists of sprint qualifying, which lasts about 30 minutes, and a sprint race, which lasts about 30 minutes. Of course, that's if cars don't crash, but that wouldn't be cars on track, they'll be parked up in the pit lane. So we lose about an hour of on-track running for the cars. Now for me, I love watching the cars go round, whether it's in practice or in a competitive session. But we lose an entire hour, which is massive for me. That's why in sprint weekends I feel like we're losing something. We're not getting the full experience of a standard weekend. The other issue, which I find, is that the cars are locked into Parc Ferme. No setup can be changed after that first practice session. So my solution would be to move the entire sprint event into Friday. Now of course the teams need to practice before they can get their cars running on a competitive session. So it would start off the first session of the weekend, FP1. That would lead into sprint qualifying, then directly into the sprint race. That means we'd have back-to-back sessions. It may run over a little bit, but we have had 90-minute practice sessions in the past without a problem. This would mean we get roughly the same amount of time with cars on track as we would at a standard race weekend. It also keeps the cars out of Parc Ferme because they wouldn't be locked into Parc Ferme until qualifying on the Saturday in its usual position in the weekend. The other interesting thing is this would allow the teams to set the cars up specifically for the sprint, meaning that they could optimise for one session at a flat out pace. The FIA could also lift some of the restrictions on the cars, meaning they could increase fuel rate, they could turn up the engine mode, really giving the sprint qualifying and sprint race the ability to be something different from the rest of the weekend. It would also mean that the weekend can continue to build its momentum through FP2, qualifying and then the race, because the sprint race is isolated on its own on the Friday. That's how I would go about fixing sprint weekends. But of course, everybody has their own opinions, and you might think that's an utter load of rubbish. I'd love to know how you think we could fix sprint weekends, and if you think this is a good idea, maybe share this video, like it, so that way it might be able to get to somebody, probably unlikely, who could make a decision on these things. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on how sprint races could be made better in the comments below.